So we're on. That was an interesting experience with our friend Rob. I think it's probably safe to say we broke him. I mean that in we love Rob. I know you're listening, mate. So yeah, it was great. I mean, that episode 1 now is more or less in the bag, which is awesome. We're off to a start. Things are happening. It was awesome to catch up with Rob and spend some time with him. And I think he felt the same. And he probably didn't the next morning, to be fair. But we do these things to ourselves. That's what we do. That's part and parcel of being Be A Fit. So we're back at it. Today we're going to be bringing in one of our team, essentially. Not only that, he's also my nephew, and his name is Tyler. Now, when I started this crazy journey a few years ago, Tyler was just leaving high school at the time, and it seemed right as the business grew to bring him into the fold. So I'm not going to tell you his story. I'm going to let him do that. So Ty, welcome.
Hello.
How are we, lads?
How are we?
Good,
how are you?
Yeah. Happy days, yeah. All good. So welcome, first and foremost, mate. I mean, to me, I know everything about you. I can tell you the size of your shoes. You know that. I'm your uncle. But there's a bunch of people out there who may have seen you on Instagram, and that's pretty much it. So tell us, where did it all begin, mate?
So after I left school, I obviously started college. Was struggling, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Was doing trades, tried that. And eventually, in 2019, you picked me up to start Z.A.
Pretty much how it went, mate. I mean, I was blasting stuff out solo for probably a year or so before that, but it was just bits, you know what I mean? We were doing odds and sods for forums and stuff. The business became a limited company in 2019, and that's more or less when it started getting quite serious. And at that point, my desire was to scale stuff, but also, you know, I've been, you know, watching you develop through your childhood and stuff like that, and come into the fold of the working world. And I thought, well, this could be a brilliant opportunity, really, to bring you into the mix, let you see what I'm doing, what we're up to, and give you some tools, essentially, on, you know, how you can go forward in your own life later on in life by you know, teaching you through my successes, teaching you through my failures, and trying to develop you from adolescence into adulthood, as any uncle should. That's part and parcel of the process. So yeah, 2019 you started doing bits with Z.A. That wasn't full time though, mate, was it?
No, so at the time I was working in a McDonald's, a McMuppet basically.
A McMuppet.
Flipping burgers and chicken nuggets. And at the time, like I said, I was trying to pick up a trade, doing an apprenticeship.
What were you trying to do? What were you looking at?
Well, the idea was I was trying to be an electrician. That was what any parent wants. Father always said to me, like, electrician, get a trade behind you. That's the idea.
Yeah.
So an apprenticeship, and as you know, they're not easy to come by.
No.
And like you said, 2019, I joined Z.A. basically as an apprentice. So it wasn't the apprenticeship that I wanted, but
it's the one you fucking got.
And you know what? I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. It's been a journey so far, and I'm really, really happy to be where I am now.
Yeah, it's been nuts, mate. I mean, it's progressed in a way where I don't think I anticipated how this would roll out, but I kind of had a feeling in my gut that it would turn into something. And you were in college at the time, and obviously working a bit in McDonald's, and you know, you needed some extra beer money. I needed 100%. A little bit of help, and it sort of worked out in that sense. And I think it started like 1 or 2 days a week, and it's Saturday, mate.
Yeah, it was a Friday and a Saturday.
I remember, yeah, Friday and a Saturday, and then that's grown into a full-time strap maker now, essentially.
Too many hours.
Yeah, too many hours. How many hours do you do, Ty? All of them. All of them. So yeah, mate, it's been an interesting ride from my perspective. What I'm interested today is to hear from your perspective. Like, is this what you thought it would be? Did you expect it to turn into what it has? Talk to me.
It's been a journey. That's what you can describe it as. Having you as a mentor has been unbelievable. Because at the time I was 17 and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had ideas of what people were telling me to do. You should do this is benefit, yeah. But I was looking for that mentor role, really.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've had an apprenticeship in basically more than just making straps. like you said, learning from your failures, learning from your wins.
Yeah.
Everything really, even just being a man.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's much, yeah.
Have to rein us in, mate. You can bring a tea to my house. But yeah, mate, it's been a nuts one. It's been a fucking right. It has. It's been a journey. That's what it's been. And it's the joy of it, mate. It's been organic. It's just kind of done its own fucking thing. As far as, you know, when you say it's been a journey, I know what you mean now. You know what you mean. The guys watching probably need a bit more meat in the bone to that. So tell me, I mean, what's the most interesting thing you think we've done on this path so far?
Scaling to where we are now.
Okay.
So in terms of, it was just you in the beginning. You picked me up about a year in. Obviously from when it was started, when you were doing it by yourself, and then you picked me up. Tom then came along, and now there's 4 of us.
Yeah.
So it's gone from being in a small room in the garage.
Yeah, fucking hell.
So now when I'm in a big unit with loads of storage, everything, there's sewing machines everywhere. You could never have anticipated from what it was to what it is now.
We had some fun in that garage, mate.
Oh yeah.
We had some fun in that garage. So for you guys who have been following the journey for a while, you'll probably be aware that a lot of this started in that garage, more or less. I think it was in the first lockdown.
Yeah.
Pretty much the whole of England was in lockdown, and you know, it was very difficult to go to work and make stuff happen. So we brought work home. That coupled with doing some bits outside of the watch game allowed us really the freedom to stay open during that period, because we were doing some bits for you know, government work, etc. But that first summer, well, the only summer really in that garage, mate, was nuts. I think the weather was insane. No one was going out and doing anything. It was just absolute freedom. We were doing quite a few lives on Instagram at the time. We had a big buzz going on in the community, and it just allowed us to be creative, come up with ideas, figure this thing out. Because as with any business, you go through a period of trying to scale stuff and trying to understand how do I do this as effectively and efficiently as possible, but how do I gain more numbers? How do I get more units out? What can we do to lean up the process? What can we do to improve, or I suppose the buzzword now is automate certain elements of production that would allow us to do things. I mean, when this started, it was a domestic sewing machine. I think I bought an Argos, which is like, it's like a department store, basically, for those unfamiliar with Argos. And, you know, we do things just with things we could find around us. I mean, eyelets on keepers, we'd buy them from a hardware store locally. And the nightmare with that was the clamp that you need to press them in would last 10 or 20 presses. So we'd end up buying 6 packs probably a week of these eyelet machines, because we knew we were going to burn through at least 4 of them in an afternoon. And that's, you know, that's an example really of how things needed to scale as we sort of grew this business and it became more successful. So that's interesting, mate. The scaling side of stuff is super interesting. We had the privilege earlier on this year as well of heading out to San Diego. We've got a good friend out there. Excuse me, let me clean my throat a minute. We got a good friend out there called Connor from Torn Knives. And Connor's gone through a very, very similar process. He started a business, bladesmithing basically, and he scaled that into a company now, and I think they basically run 24/7 through different shifts, etc. So they've gone through this manufacturing process over the period of the last, I want to say 6 or 7 years, and as you alluded to a little bit earlier, where I've been in a position to mentor you through certain things, I've had the fortunate luck really of stumbling across these guys, and they've done similar things with me. So we went out in, was it April?
Yeah, mid-April.
We went out, and the whole theory behind that was to go out and have a look at their operation. I peeled off and did some stuff with Connor, trying to understand, you know, the driving of the business side of things. And you spent a bit of time with their production manager, Joe, yeah, picking up processes and how to manage manufacturing at scale, which was super interesting. I think you got a lot from that.
Yeah, it was brilliant. So I spent, what was it, day or two with Joe, and he took me around the workshop and was explaining to me reasons why they do things the certain way they do, and how this benefits them from what they used to do. And like the learning curve I had from that was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was. It's massively beneficial, and we're in a situation, I think, in the UK where we haven't had people maintaining manufacturing to the same level, the same standard as we've seen in the US. Naturally, over the last 40 years or so, stuff has tippled off to the mid and the Far East, mainly the Far East. And a lot of that skill set, a lot of that understanding and that process has been lost really in the UK. With the US, I see them as probably 10 years ahead of us on many things, simply because they've got ownership over some of their own supply chains, they've got ownership over their manufacturing process, and a lot more things have remained domestic. So for us to be in a situation as a business that, to head out to the US and be able to learn from these guys who have gone through the mill and understand it, have maintained that skill set is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, I enjoyed that trip with you, mate. It was a blast. I think we had a few beers, one or two of the nights, and ended up paying for that. I'll never forget that morning we woke up and we headed down by the airport, just on the water, and we just sat there for about 45 minutes in silence, just trying to gather our thoughts and make ourselves feel like humans again.
It was a rough night.
It was a rough night, mate. Yeah, it was a rough night. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that, mate. So it's I suppose that leads on to the next question. Really, is if that's the bit you've enjoyed the most, what's the bit you've hated the most? Or hate's a strong word, but what's the bit you've disliked the most?
Well, doing the manufacturing.
Be careful as well, your answer.
Doing the manufacturing, it's long, it's repetitive.
Yeah.
Mentally, you've got to build them calluses on your mind.
Yes.
Because if you don't, it's long, very long.
Yeah. Repetition. Yeah. A lot of it's repetition. I mean, when we're building things, and we do corporate work, for example, for brands like Sangin or Vertex, we'll have multiple pieces. Sometimes that's hundreds of units that we've got to get through and make the same thing 100 times over, 200 times over, sometimes 1,000 times over. That's just the nature of doing things. So going through that process, monotony really of, making the same movements with your body and your hands and everything time after time for what is in essence probably a couple of days, in each phase of production. That's taxing. And unless you're in a good spot, in your mind, it can draw you down a bit. I think we've combated that since day one, really, through podcast.
Yeah.
We've always had podcasts.
Joey Diaz and Subways.
Joey Diaz, mate. Joey Diaz got us through so much. Shout out to Uncle Joey. If you guys don't know who he is, check him out. His podcast, I think it was called The Church. He did it when he was still in LA. He's one of Joe Rogan's mates. He's a comedian, and he's been, I think he was in The Longest Yard, one of the Adam Sandler movies. But he's super raw, super funny, absolutely not family friendly content. He's an animal. But when you're there, doing the same thing 500 times in a row, being able to escape mentally.
Especially with his stories, some of them stories.
Oh, mate.
Wow.
Mate.
That man's lived a life.
He's lived a life, mate. Joey Diaz is the one. Joey Diaz is the one. But yeah, that's no, I get that, mate. I get that. It's repetitive. A lot of it is repetitive. That's just the fucking nature of it.
I suppose as well, earlier on as well, it was a lot more repetitive. Now that we've obviously leaned out the processes a lot more from like 2 years ago, things are a lot easier in certain ways because you're not doing the same processes as what we were. So
yeah, when it started, I mean, it was never intended. I said this in the previous episode. It was never intended to become a business. So I built processes on how to manufacture things, small scale, ones and twos, and that's brilliant until it becomes a thing, and then you have dozens of people, sometimes hundreds of people, chasing the same product. And the way you did it previously just isn't fit for purpose anymore. You can't do it. The equipment you've been using just isn't there. You need to improve that. You need to find ways of developing that process that's going to allow you or enable you to grow to scale, basically, to scale output, to scale production, whilst maintaining the quality, if not improving it where you can. And that's been the interesting piece for me, really. When I started this, I was working for a big software company, essentially. And what we would do, we go into businesses and look at their processes digitally, and try and figure out ways of automating certain elements of their business. And the theory behind that was you could have a big chief executive of a company pulling in a 6-figure salary. He's worth more money to that business doing his job, way more than he is answering emails or dealing with moving documentation around a business or things like that. So if you could build processes around that, that will enable him to take the monotony away from the role, or her, the monotony away from the role, they can then focus on what they're actually there to do. Do you know what I mean? Which is the management, the leadership, the direction, or you can scale that down. You can look at a law professional, for example, a lawyer. You imagine how much bureaucracy is involved in that role. And essentially what that means is there's so much paperwork and process around anything. It stops them actually doing the job that they should be doing, because they're swamped in rubbish. So we'd build software that would enable them or allow them to be more efficient in that sort of side of the house, which would free them up to do what they're there to do. And for a lot of businesses, that's what they want to do as well, because that's where they're making money.
I suppose when you get to a point where you're like that, drowned in that type of work, you end up a busy fool, I suppose. Absolutely.
There's a danger of that. Busy fool is a perfect way to put it. And so many people, another one I've heard is multiple target syndrome. Do you know what I mean? You're chasing so many different things, you haven't got ownership over anything, really.
You're not making any progress.
And it becomes detrimental. It really does. So I came from that environment. When I came into this, I sort of understood the logic of, right, okay, well, we don't necessarily need to be hand stamping 500 envelopes one after the other. This is a basic example, but we don't need to do that. We can go to a printer, we can have him do that, or have him print them off for us. When they arrive, it's done. We've leaned out one phase of production there and probably saved a couple of hours a week.
Yeah, because that's the Tom side of stuff, isn't it? And that frees him up to then fulfill more orders. Let's say, for example, he can spend more time on the stuff he needs to do, like getting orders out on time or
exactly
other things.
The role he's there to do.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And deal with customer service issues and stuff like that, which is exactly the role. That's what they're there to do. As far as the production and manufacturing side of the house goes, it's very, very similar in the sense of, right, we need strips cut. And if you go back to our Instagram early on, we had this steel box basically with 2 pipes coming out of it and a blade going across the top, and we would like handball
mark one
bits
eyeball,
of webbing, mark one eyeball, bit of webbing, and just figure out, right, okay, we'll burn that there. The major drama with that was, number one, it was just fumes everywhere, and we were probably going to die of emphysema in about 3 months. The other issue is consistency. Do you know what I mean? You end up with some strips longer than others, a bit more wastage than you possibly need. So you look at it and you're like, right, is there a better way of doing this? How do we go about that? So you spend a bit of time in research and you come up with something like a strip cutter, which was an absolute fucking godsend. But we didn't know the thing existed because we're not from the textiles world. But when we stumbled across that, I was like, right, okay, so now I can pre-program this magic box into cutting strips for me at any length that I want them to.
And just walk away from it.
And then move on to the next phase, or prep for the next phase of production, which in turn then is leaning out your process and giving you time back to do the things that you actually need to do by hand. The whole process is a process. That's exactly what it is. It's different phases of production when we manufacture things, from the webbing coming in on a roll, which will mean that then we have to cut it down, then we have to prep it, then it moves on to the next phase, then the next phase, then the next phase, and then it's all finished off in the end by hand finishing. So, some of you guys have been at the shop and we've got a couch bang in the middle of the workshop, and we just sit around it basically when we've got an order going out, and everyone's there with little snips and a lighter, just hand finishing everything, just going through it, making sure everything's tickety-boo before they go off and get shipped. So yeah, it's leaning out processes, leaning out production, leaning out manufacturing is definitely something that's helped us. It's definitely something that's allowed us to scale the business and scale production in a way where we can achieve the same amount of work, if not more, than previous, without having to bring other people into the business. We've got a team of 4 at the minute, which is great, and we've got an awesome culture.
Yeah,
like it's a fun place to be. Most of our friends like hate or dread Mondays. Like, we fucking love them.
Banter in there's awesome.
I love them. I love a Monday. Do you know what I mean? We get in, everyone's like buzzed and hyped because we're emotionally invested in what we're doing. We thoroughly enjoy that side of it, and then we get the task in hand. So it's the same as anything really. We have a briefing, go through the motions. What do we need to achieve this week? It gets set out on the board. Everyone's delegated whatever tasks and roles they're taking on that week, and then bang, we get to it. Yeah, it's as simple as that. And because we're emotionally invested in the company, and because we're emotionally invested in what we're doing, what that allows us to do is be autonomous. Like, we don't need to be on each other's back, or I don't, from a leadership standpoint, need to be checking on my guys all the time. I got good guys. I didn't hire intelligent people to tell them what to do. They understand the task in hand. We're emotionally invested in what we're doing. We've got a defined deadline, and we work to it. On that defined deadline, a lot of you guys are probably similar ages to me, and we grew up watching things like Pimp My Ride or West Coast Customs, Orange County Choppers, and all that fucking mad shit from back in the day. And I remember looking at that at the time and being like, nah, it's fucking bullshit. Do you know what I mean? The deadlines are, we've got to get this done in 3 fucking days. And you think, mate, you full of shit. Do you know what I mean? What's the customer going to do? Walk away? It's bollocks. Not a fucking chance. I never anticipated being in a position in my life where I'd be in that fucking role. Do you know what I mean? And going, Jesus Christ, we've got to get this done. We've got to get that done. We've had instances, mate, where we've had projects on where we've been in that shop for like 18 days straight. Yeah. From fucking 8 till 8, back to back, just making stuff happen.
Like the first WOE job.
Oh, Jesus, fuck.
That was a big job.
That was a big job. That was a big job. That was an interesting thing, actually. So you guys know about WOE. Essentially, this thing arrived on the internet. I don't know how better to describe it. I'm sorry, I'm lacking for words. This tornado came through the internet.
Kicked the door down about 18 months, 2 years ago.
I started delivering content, really interesting content. And this is where it gets tasty as well, right? This is, I'm gonna get comfy now, because I'm gonna have a little story time. Pull up the sandbag, all right? Essentially, the whole watch game is based around the advancements in military watches. That's always been the case. How the military of required timekeeping has always had a knock-on impact then into the wider watch world and the wider watch game. So, for example, waterproof watches. Okay, who came up with that? Actually wearing a wristwatch. Where did that start? Well, for those that don't know, that was... it goes back to more or less Victorian Britain, conflicts and ops in, I think what would have been India at the time, and the Crimea. You had guys who were walking around with pocket watches, and it's just a little too impractical pulling that out. When you're on a cavalry charge, so they'd mount them on their wrist, etc. So the whole thing around watches are based on advancements in the military, but very little of the watch media acknowledge or want to engage with that side of things, essentially. So by that, what do I mean? I mean, we have multiple publications in the watch world, same as you do in anything, and these guys never really delve into the nitty-gritty or tell the stories around the military side of the house, because it's polarizing and because it's sometimes political, and I get that. But that doesn't mean that the desire to see it or hear it isn't there. So I think WOE arrived and ticked that box for a lot of people. A huge amount of content started coming out. Crazy stuff like, what watch did Castro wear? What was he documented having? SEAL team stuff, what are the guys wearing out in the field? What's going on there? In addition to that, some slightly weird and wonderful stuff around Tabasco sauce, and it's just
endless.
It's endless. There's so much content there, and I'm not doing it justice at this point. So I'm gonna shut up. But essentially, if you haven't come across WOE, you need to check them out. But that whole thing created a movement, and it created a bunch of people who were invested in understanding the side of watches based in and around espionage and conflict and things like that, and how certain operators in certain roles wear and use these products. And that turned into a desire, really, to create something for these consumers of this content that would allow them to both overtly and covertly display their support for this publication. So what that led to was a conversation between us and WOE around developing a strap that is overtly obvious WOE, because it's got branding on it, but covert in a sense where the branding can be hidden. So it's a kind of if you know thing. And this was we'd never done this before with WOE. WOE had never done this before with anyone else. So we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves in for at that point. And then we had an idea, we had a rough idea, we were working towards it, trying to figure it out. But it turned into something way bigger than we kind of anticipated.
Massively.
Way bigger than we kind of anticipated.
It pushed our limits as well.
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
At the time, it was just me, you, and Tom.
Yeah.
And at that time, me and you were mainly doing the production. Obviously, Tom was doing the fulfillment side of things.
Yeah, the admin.
So for two people to be doing the production, was a lot, and that's why we were spending 19 hours a day.
Yes.
In the office, weekends,
yes.
21 days in a row.
Yeah. It was a massive. It was like trying to eat an elephant. That's exactly what it was. And how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It's that simple. You just keep going forward. But we got through it. We did it, and there's a lot of lessons learned from that on how we can improve processes and how we can better meet the demand that we'd established was there. And that then had a knock-on effect into the other elements of the business and the other things that we do. So you take your lessons learned from these big projects, and you anticipate that this type of thing is going to come again. So you try and figure out better ways of doing it. But of course, those better ways then slip or seep into the day-to-day stuff that we do. We just had a new machine delivered this week, and we've been waiting 3 weeks to get an electrician out to run a specialist cable to the fucking thing so we can actually use it. But yeah, I mean that's in many elements part of that journey is trying to figure that out, and how are we going to do it? How do we improve upon it? How do we become more productive, with the same scope of people? Because something I've not wanted to do really is change the culture of the business. And I think there's a danger sometimes when company scales or businesses grow where the dynamic changes.
Yeah, especially when there's a lot of pressure on.
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of weird as well because we're in a situation where we work together, but we're also family. So we can engage with each other in a way that in a corporate environment would probably be seen to be unprofessional, questionable, unprofessional. But you get a bunch of lads together. I mean, you guys will know this. Look at any mess hall or mess deck or across any military in the world. You get a bunch of lads together, and it turns into a very interesting place to be. And where we are isn't different. But it's trying to maintain that love of it through scaling, but also developing a business in a place where we can do more with what we got, rather than go out and hire a bunch of people to come in and help out with things. We can look at certain elements of what we do and try and improve upon the process of doing those things, which enable us to be more productive in the overall. The other side of that as well is if we are hiring people, which we have been, we took on a new member of staff a few months ago. We want to hire people that we keep. If we're giving someone a job, we want them to stay. A lot of sew shops or machine houses, across the UK at least, will take staff on more or less seasonally. They'll have a big project come in, they'll hire a bunch of people, and then when that project's finished,
they let them all go at the end of it, I suppose.
That's exactly what happens. They let them go, and then another shop 5 mile away will pick up a contract for something, and then these staff just end up bouncing around and moving around place to place. That's not what we want. The way we've done this is through emotional investment in the team, and we all buy into what we're doing, and we're passionate about the product, and we try and make the best thing we can. So the only way we can really do that is by having a solid team put together that's consistent, and keeping guys where they are and in one place is key to that, really. It's key to that. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear this from your point of view, because even though we see each other every day, more or less, and we're close and this, that and the other, I don't think I've ever asked you these questions.
No, I don't think so. There's loads of lessons that I've learned so far, like the difference between managing and leading. That's been a big one this year, especially when we went out to San Diego. Joe was talking a lot of that with me as well, and the difference between that. Yeah. Because if you manage people, you're not going to have the best environments, but if you're leading people, they'll follow you to the end of the earth. Absolutely,
mate. Absolutely. And there's snippets and techniques and stuff like that you can use to better things on that, or better your grasp on that leadership role and aspect. I've taught you what I know and what I've accrued and the little knowledge I have in the grand scheme of things. But there are a bunch of guys out there who have put stuff together, in a format where you can consume it if you're interested in that sort of stuff. Brilliant place to start. It's one of Jocko's books, Jocko Willink. I think it's How Navy SEALs Lead and Win. Really interesting book from a management or leadership standpoint. If you're in a business or an organisation, and you're coming into your first leadership role, I recommend you pick that book up, have a look at it, and go to the bookstore to buy that, or go to a shop to buy it, because you'll find other things in the same section that are very similar. Jocko rung true with me. I read that when it first came out 4 years ago. Extreme Ownership, and it worked for me because I could correlate it to the naval environment I was from, so I could understand the language and the things he was saying. It just made sense that he spoke my language. But for some folks who haven't been in the military, then there are options out there and other things you can go and check out. But leadership and management are completely two different fucking things. And leading a team is fundamental when the shit hits a fan, which it does with us. Yeah. That's the nature of what we do and how we do it. We have our run rate stuff on the website, which happens every week in, week out. And then from time to time, we'll have projects or big things that kick in and that require a huge amount more from us as individuals over a short space of time or a short period of time. That's just the nature of it. Hence why I end up like that fucking old guy from Orange County Choppers, the one with the tash. Throw fucking chairs across us, kicking off. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Yeah, full of tattoos. That's the only bit. I'm gonna have to buy me a vest for Christmas. I think that's when and a bandana, like fucking Robert Hogan Day on a Thursday or something, Hulkamania Day Thursdays. But yeah, I mean that's a bit of an insight really into your story and your progression really from school to where you are now. It's interesting really because even though we see each other every day and we spend so much time together, I don't think I've ever asked you these questions. So from my standpoint, it's interesting to hear your thoughts on this progression and how we've developed this and gone on this journey essentially together really for most of it. Pretty much. So the next question for you is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'd like to be in your position, in the fact that obviously the way you've developed, obviously with the business and stuff like that, I'd like to venture off into my own thing eventually. Okay. I'd like to start in the next 5 years, possibly, because I've learned all these lessons so far of leadership, management, how to lean out processes, all that stuff. And
I'd like to have my own thing one day, because it's watching you create Z.A and how you've developed the business over the last 3 years. I'd like to create my own story with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's interesting, mate. I mean, ultimately, when more or less you started, really, one of the things I said to you, and we've briefly touched on it during this conversation, is you will learn from my successes and my failures, but pay more attention to my failures, because you're getting a crash course really in what to do and what not to do, and that's the interesting aspect of it. You're still young, mate. You're still very, very young, and what you're getting exposure wise now is phenomenal, really, and that should set you up, for the next 10, 5, 10, 15, 20 years to absolutely fucking dominate and do your own thing and go your own route.
Well, in essence, it's an apprenticeship in business.
It's weird, isn't it, how it works?
Yeah, it's insane.
All this from fucking watch straps. Who'd have thought? Fucking watch straps. Get your head on that. Makes no sense. But yeah, mate, it's interesting. I've enjoyed seeing you develop, mate, and seeing you grow, and sometimes I've been fucking a little harsh with you. But that's come from a position of love, and because I don't want you to fucking make stupid mistakes like I did. Do you know what I mean? So I think you get that as well. And I hold you to a higher standard than I would most. Yeah. Because from an uncle standpoint, I just want to see you fucking succeed and do stuff. Do you know what I mean? And be the best you could possibly be. So yeah, bear with me on that, mate, because we take the rough with the smooth, but no, it comes from a position of love. I think I know you do anyway, but yeah, it's interesting, mate. I mean, I'd like to get in a situation where you're running things and I'm on a yacht somewhere. You know what I mean? Having martinis, that'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? Do you know what I mean? And then you can
phone call once a week.
Yeah, phone call once a week.
How do we sort this out?
I'm there with a big shaggy hairdo. Do you know what I mean? With like a hippie vest on or whatever.
And Versace shorts. Conor McGregor in it.
Versace shorts. Conor McGregor in it round the Med. And then we can get into a situation where my kids are under your tutelage in the same way as you were under mine, and so the cycle
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so the cycle goes. So yeah, I mean that's it in a nutshell. I wanted to bring Tyler in to give you a bit of an understanding of the human element of what we do and how it is a family business, and it's grown and developed over a period of time, and it's impacted, not only my life, Tyler's life, the wider family's life. It's very much ownership really throughout the family, of the brand, in the sense of everyone's invested in it in their own way.
But it's also brought other things on, like the love for watches. That's one thing I never thought I'd be into.
Mate, that's fucking super weird how that worked out. So you've gone from not liking watches at all to being like the fucking watch pest at this point.
Literally.
What are you rocking today?
The Tudor Black Bay Pro.
Ooh, very nice.
WOE 3.0.
The 3.0. So that's interesting on its own, because by the time this goes out, that's probably come and gone. But we took delivery of that webbing from the production side of it 24, 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
About that. It would have been, today's Friday, so that came in late Wednesday.
Yeah,
late Wednesday
afternoon.
To a point where like we were ready to shut up the shop. The shutters were coming down, the fucking van turned up. So we spent yesterday blasting out as many of them as we could to get them out to the right places. Down to Rob, for example, for photography and stuff. I haven't even got one yet. You're rocking one, because you had the task yesterday of making them, and naturally, one for me, one for you.
Yeah.
That's how it rolls. So yeah, it sits well on that watch as well.
It's a good partnership.
Yeah, the colours.
Very good.
The colours pop. It's just the same colour as the dial, really, but inverted. Which is gleaming. Yeah, your love for watches.
Because my first watch at this point was a Armani watch, which is tragic now looking at it.
Mate.
Like, I think it was 16, and
Yeah.
it was like, I think it was a 44 mil. It was massive. At that time, I was built like a stick. So
Mate,
it was just, it was like lugging this around, carrying it
But like a Slim Jim, carrying a clock and a belt round.
I thought it was cool in school walking around with it, so... Oh, look
Got
at
a
me.
Giorgio Bimbani. Here I am. Fucking Bigelow watch. Interesting, mate. Your auntie, my wife, actually bought me one of them fucking 10, 12 years ago. And it's fucking horrendous. It's horrendous. Uncle Paul lent the money, I think, one Christmas. We just got together. We didn't have a fucking pot to piss in. Uncle Paul lent us some money. She went into the jewelers just around the corner from here, actually, and picked this fucking thing up and gave it to me on Christmas Day. And I was the same as you. It was thrilled to bits. It's fucking awesome. Do you know what I mean? Fantastic. And she fucking hates that watch now.
Yeah.
She hates it. So I'll open the watch box every so often and it's still there. Pride of place in, top right-hand corner. Surrounded by other things that are way more interesting, do you know what I mean, than that. And it fucking bugs her because she's come on that journey similar to you and gone and developed her knowledge on watches. And now she looks back at it and thinks, fucking hell, why did I buy that watch? Do you know what I mean? But I kind of will. I'll never get rid of that because I enjoy fucking embarrassing her with it.
It's the beginning as well, I suppose.
Yeah, it's the beginning.
Because like for me, don't get me wrong, I've got the watch box and there's a lot of interesting watches in there. And
yeah.
I don't wear it ever anymore, but I'll never get rid of it.
No, it'll always be there.
Yeah.
It'll always be there.
Because that's where it started.
Absolutely.
Because like the watches, it's an emotional investment.
You become emotionally invested in these fucking things. As I said last week, it makes no fucking sense.
You've got a phone that tells you the time though.
Yeah, connected to a fucking satellite in the sky.
So,
why do we have cogs and gears on our wrist?
We don't need to.
It's emotional investment.
We buy 4 or 5 of them a year.
Mate, I don't get that. Like, I do, and I fucking love it, and I thoroughly enjoy it, but I do not fucking get that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a proper addiction. It's like being a fucking crackhead. Just chasing a fix for a watch.
Better than buying drugs.
Fucking right. Fucking right. He knows. I've taught it in the same fucking chat. But yeah, so for me, that kind of wraps up. That kind of wraps up this episode. Thanks for joining us again. Coming up next, we've got some interesting people coming in. I think we've actually managed to confirm Don from Vertex coming up. Mate, it's going to be awesome. I can't believe we actually got him out of London.
Hello.
He doesn't leave. Up north. He leaves London, in fairness. I need to rephrase that. I can't believe we got him up north. He's a very well-travelled man, is Don.
Not up north.
But not up north. You just fly over it when you're going somewhere else.
Round
it, over it. Yeah, it's just never into it. So yeah, he's confirmed. We've also got an episode coming up with Kim Hughes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Kim's up next week. Going to spend a bit of time with us at the workshop, and I've managed again to coerce him into getting in here and having a bit of a fucking conflab with me, telling his story and how he's connected to watches and stuff like that. So again, thanks for listening in. I appreciate it. Like, follow, subscribe. I've just said that because everyone fucking says that. There's nothing to like, follow, subscribe at this point. Just fucking keep listening. Just do it, whatever that means. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.